After the asteroid, the world did not become quiet. It became empty in a way life had not experienced for millions of years. Forests burned, sunlight faded, food chains broke, and the animals that had seemed almost permanent vanished from land, sea, and sky. The non-avian dinosaurs did not lose a war against mammals. They were not defeated by clever little fur-covered rivals waiting in the shadows with a plan. They were hit by a planetary catastrophe. The old rules collapsed in a geologic instant, and for a while, survival mattered more than size, strength, or dominance. This is where the story of mammals really begins. Not because mammals suddenly became superior, but because they were still there when the door opened. Before the impact, mammals had already lived beside dinosaurs for more than 100 million years. They were not all identical shrew-like creatures hiding helplessly under leaves. Many were small, yes, but they were diverse, persistent, and ecologically clever. Some climbed, some burrowed, some swam, some ate insects, some ate plants, some had teeth adapted for grinding, slicing, crushing, and gnawing. They were not rulers, but they were not failures. The asteroid changed the value of those traits. A world dominated by giant dinosaurs rewarded one kind of body plan. A shattered world rewarded another. When ecosystems are rich and stable, large specialized animals can thrive. When ecosystems crash, small bodies, flexible diets, fast reproduction, sheltering habits, and the ability to survive on scraps can become powerful advantages. Mammals did not take over because they were destined to rule. They survived because enough of them had traits that worked in disaster, and then, over millions of years, their descendants expanded into the spaces left behind. Imagine the first years after impact. The sky is dim, plant life is damaged. Fresh leaves, fruits, and stable food webs are unreliable. Animals depending on large amounts of fresh vegetation are in deep trouble. Predators depending on those animals are in trouble too. But a small mammal in a burrow may endure the worst heat, cold, fire, and darkness. It may eat insects, seeds, roots, fungi, carrion, or anything that can be found. It may reproduce quickly enough that even heavy losses do not erase the lineage. It does not need a forest canopy full of leaves every day. It needs a crack in the world and enough calories to keep going. That is not glamorous survival. It is not the survival of champions. It is the survival of animals built for uncertainty. This matters because the rise of mammals is often told as if history were waiting for them. The dinosaurs die, mammals step forward, and the age of mammals begins. But evolution does not wait, plan, or reward virtue. It only works with variation, death, reproduction, and opportunity. Mammals inherited the earth because some lineages survived a catastrophe, because empty ecological roles appeared, because climates shifted, because plants recovered, because insects diversified, because continents moved, because millions of years passed, and because countless small experiments happened across landscapes no human ever saw. The phrase age of mammals is useful, but it can be misleading. It makes the story sound like a coronation. In reality, the early Paleogene world was a recovery zone. It was not instantly filled with elephants, whales, horses, bats, primates, and humans. It was filled with small survivors, strange opportunists, damaged ecosystems, and slow rebuilding. The first mammal success after the extinction was not world domination. It was persistence. Before the asteroid, mammals had lived mostly in niches that dinosaurs did not fully occupy. They were often small and nocturnal, though not always. The old picture of Mesozoic mammals as weak little creatures has changed as fossils have improved. We now know they included gliders, swimmers, burrowers, badger-like predators, herbivores, and specialized insect eaters. Dinosaurs still dominated large-bodied land roles, but mammals had already built a toolkit of ecological possibilities. That toolkit became crucial after the extinction. Nocturnality may have helped some mammals. Living in the dark meant relying on senses other than daylight vision, such as smell, hearing, and touch. Burrowing helped too. Underground spaces could buffer temperature swings, protect against fires, and hide animals from chaos above. Small body size reduced food requirements. A tiny animal can survive on resources that would be meaningless to a giant. Reproductive flexibility mattered as well. Many mammal lineages could produce relatively fast generations compared with large dinosaurs. In a damaged world, speed of recovery can be everything. Debt was just as important. Specialists often suffer when environments collapse. Generalists have options. If one food disappears, another might remain. insects, seeds, detritus, roots, decaying wood, aquatic resources, carcasses, and underground food stores could keep small mammals alive when photosynthesis-driven food chains were damaged. Some of the survivors were likely animals that could exploit low-quality, scattered, unpredictable resources. In a world after fire and darkness, that flexibility may have mattered more than power. This does not mean all mammals survived easily. Many mammal lineages died. The KPG extinction was not a convenient clearing of the stage for one favored group. It was brutal. Mammals suffered major losses too. Survival was uneven. Some groups disappeared, some barely made it through, and some later expanded. We should not imagine the survivors as untouched winners. They were survivors of a massacre. The Earth they inherited was not paradise. It was a planet in recovery. Ferns and pioneer plants spread in disturbed landscapes. Forests returned unevenly. Food webs had to be rebuilt from the bottom up. The animals that survived were not simply walking into vacant mansions, they were entering burned houses and learning how to live there. Over time, however, emptiness became opportunity. With the large non-avian dinosaurs gone from land ecosystems, many roles opened. Large herbivore roles, medium herbivore roles, large predator roles, digging niches, swimming niches, grazing niches that would later become important as grasslands expanded. Mammals did not fill all of these immediately, and they did not fill them in a straight line. But the ceiling had been lifted. For the first time in over 100 million years, mammal lineages could explore larger body sizes and broader ecological strategies without living under the same dinosaur-dominated structure. One of the most dramatic changes after the extinction was body size. Early Cenozoic mammals began to get bigger. Not all at once, not everywhere, and not in every lineage, but the trend is clear. Small animals remained important, but some mammals moved into medium and large body sizes. Bigger bodies allowed new diets, new defenses, new movement patterns, and new predator-prey relationships. Size itself became an evolutionary frontier. The first large mammals after the extinction were not modern-looking elephants or horses. They were often strange, bulky, experimental animals that can look awkward to modern eyes. Some were herbivores, with heavy bodies and unusual teeth. Some were omnivores. Some lineages rose and vanished without leaving living descendants. This is another part of the story people often miss. The rise of mammals was not a smooth march toward familiar animals. It was a messy explosion of experiments, many of which failed. That messiness is what makes it real. Evolution does not know that whales will one day swim in oceans, bats will fly at night, horses will run on grasslands, or primates will climb toward human ancestry. It does not aim for us. It produces forms that fit local conditions for a time. Some persist, some transform, some vanish. The Paleogene world was full of mammal experiments that were successful in their own moment, even if they did not become modern icons. The earliest recovery of mammals after the extinction is preserved in some remarkable fossil sites, where bones, teeth, plants, and sediments show ecosystems rebuilding. These records reveal not a sudden leap to modernity, but a stepwise recovery. Plants come back, mammals diversify, body sizes increase, diets broaden, forests restructure. The animal world begins to regain complexity. In that slow return of complexity, mammals gain momentum. Teeth tell much of the story. Mammal teeth are extraordinary evolutionary tools. Unlike the simpler teeth of many reptiles, mammal teeth can be highly specialized. Molars can crush, grind, shear, and slice. Tooth shapes reveal diets. After the extinction, changes in teeth show mammals exploring new food sources. Some lineages adapted to leaves, fruits, seeds, insects, meat, and mixed diets. The mouth became a map of ecological expansion. Skulls and limbs tell the rest. A mammal that climbs needs different joints from one that runs. A digger needs strong forelimbs. A swimmer needs changes in limbs and body shape. A predator needs jaws, senses, and speed or strength. As mammals diversified, their skeletons began to occupy new regions of anatomical possibility. The world was not just gaining more mammal species. It was gaining more mammal ways of life. The flowering plants also mattered. Angiosperms had already diversified before the extinction, but their continued expansion shaped Cenozoic ecosystems. Fruits, seeds, flowers, leaves, and the insects associated with them provided food and habitat. Mammals interacted with these resources in many ways. Some ate fruits and dispersed seeds. Some ate insects living on plants. Some evolved teeth and guts suited to vegetation. mammal evolution was not happening alone. It was tied to plant evolution, insect evolution, and changing habitats. This is why the rise of mammals should be seen as ecological rebuilding, not a single group victory. Mammals did not rise in isolation. They rose with forests, insects, birds, reptiles, freshwater systems, soils, and climate. They became part of new networks. The empty spaces left by dinosaurs were not just empty chairs waiting for mammals. They were damaged systems slowly becoming complex enough for new roles to exist. One of the major branches in this story is the split between placental mammals and marsupials, along with monotremes as another surviving mammalian lineage. Placental mammals include most mammals people think of today: whales, bats, elephants, horses, dogs, cats, rodents, primates, and humans. Marsupials include kangaroos, koalas, wombats, opossums, and many extinct forms. Monotremes like platypuses and echidnas represent a more distant branch that lays eggs. These groups show that mammal evolution did not follow one reproductive strategy. Reproduction is central to mammal success. Placental mammals nourish young internally for a longer time before birth, allowing relatively developed offspring in many lineages. Marsupials give birth to tiny young that continue development in a pouch or attached to a teat. Monotremes lay eggs but still produce milk. None of these strategies is simply better in all conditions. Each has trade-offs, but after the extinction, reproductive strategies interacted with ecology, body size, mobility, and parental care in ways that helped mammals diversify. Mammalian parental care is one of the group's defining strengths. Milk allows mothers to feed young directly, even when external food is difficult for newborns to process. Warm-blooded metabolism allows many mammals to remain active in different temperatures. Fur provides insulation. Behavioral flexibility allows learning. These traits did not make mammals invincible, but they gave them tools for survival in changing environments. Warm-bloodedness is especially important, but it comes with cost. Endothermy requires energy. A warm-blooded animal must eat enough to fuel its metabolism. In stable ecosystems, that can be an advantage because it allows activity in cold, dark, or variable conditions. In disaster, it can be dangerous if food is scarce. Small surviving mammals may have balanced this through low body size, sheltering behavior, torpor in some lineages, and flexible diets. The traits that help can also become liabilities depending on context. That is the pattern again and again. Evolution is not a list of superior features. It is a set of trade-offs under changing conditions. Small size helped some mammals survive the immediate aftermath, but later larger size opened new opportunities. Generalist diets helped survival, but later specialization allowed some lineages to become expert grazers, swimmers, flyers, or predators. Flexibility gets a lineage through chaos. Specialization can make it powerful in a stable niche. The rise of mammals involved both. As the Paleocene unfolded, mammals began taking on larger herbivore roles. Some early herbivorous mammals were heavy-bodied and low-slung. Others developed teeth suited for plant processing. Plant eating is not easy. Leaves can be tough, fibrous, chemically defended, and low in calories. To live as a herbivore, a mammal often needs specialized teeth, digestive systems, large guts, microbial help, and enough time to feed. After the extinction, as vegetation recovered and habitats changed, herbivory became one of the great mammalian frontiers. Predation followed too. Early mammalian carnivores did not immediately resemble lions or wolves. Some extinct groups filled meat-eating roles before modern carnivoran lineages became dominant. There were creodonts and other predatory mammals that experimented with different skulls, teeth, and body shapes. Some became formidable hunters, some later disappeared. The meat-eating world after the dinosaurs was not instantly handed to cats and dogs. It had its own lost predators. This is another reason the story is richer than a simple handoff. When dinosaurs disappeared, mammals did not instantly become the modern caste. The early Cenozoic was full of lineages with no living equivalent. It was a world of temporary rulers. Some dominated for millions of years, then vanished. Others quietly persisted and later gave rise to familiar groups. The road to the modern world was full of branches that ended. Birds also remained important. Non-avian dinosaurs were gone, but birds survived and diversified. Some birds became large terrestrial animals. Some became formidable predators in certain ecosystems. Crocodilians survived. Snakes and lizards survived. Turtles survived. The post-asteroid world was not mammals alone. Mammals rose within a broader survivor community, competing and coexisting with many other animals. The phrase mammals took over should be understood as increasing ecological dominance, not total monopoly. In the oceans, the mammal story took an especially dramatic turn much later. The ancestors of whales were land mammals. Over millions of years, some lineages moved toward water, then into water, then became fully aquatic. Their limbs changed. Their bodies streamlined. Their nostrils shifted. Their ears adapted for underwater hearing. Their tails became powerful swimming organs. Eventually, whales became the largest animals on Earth. Nothing about a small Paleocene mammal would make that future obvious. Whale evolution is one of the clearest examples of opportunity and transformation without direction. Mammals did not evolve because they were trying to become whales. Some mammals lived near water, exploited aquatic food, and over generations became better suited to aquatic life. Each step had to work in its own time. The result, seen from the future, looks astonishing. Land mammals returning to the sea and eventually producing blue whales, dolphins, and deep-diving giants. Bats tell another extraordinary story. They are mammals that achieved powered flight. Not gliding, not falling with style, but true flapping flight. Their hands became wings, their fingers elongated. Their sensory systems in many lineages evolved echolocation. Bats turned the night sky into mammalian territory again. No evolutionary plan pointed toward this. It emerged from small-bodied mammals, nocturnal habits, insect hunting, and incremental changes that made aerial life possible. Together, whales and bats show the scale of mammal expansion after the extinction. Mammals did not simply become bigger on land. They entered oceans and skies. They became burrowers, climbers, swimmers, flyers, grazers, hunters, seed-eaters, nectar feeders, and tool users. They became everything from shrews to elephants, from moles to whales, from bats to humans. That range is the real meaning of taking over the world. Grasslands later reshaped mammal evolution again. In the early Cenozoic, forests were widespread in many regions, but climates and habitats changed. As grasslands expanded in later epochs, mammals adapted to open country life. Horses developed more specialized teeth and limbs for running and grazing. Antelope, bovids, and other grazers diversified. Predators adapted to chasing or ambushing animals in more open landscapes. The mammal world kept changing because the plant world and climate kept changing. This is why timescale matters. The rise of mammals was not one event after the asteroid. It unfolded over tens of millions of years. The first survivors were not modern mammals in miniature. The first expansions did not include all later forms. Major groups rose at different times. Some familiar animals are geologically recent compared with the extinction event. Humans are extremely recent. If the KPG extinction is the door opening, the house took a very long time to fill. Primates enter the story not as the goal, but as one branch among many. Early primate relatives were small, tree-living mammals in a world of forests. Their lives favored grasping, balance, vision, and flexible behavior. Over time, primates diversified into lemurs, monkeys, apes, and eventually hominins. The human lineage is part of this much larger primate story. We are not the reason mammals survived. We are one late consequence of a much older mammalian radiation. It is tempting to narrate mammal evolution as a ladder leading to humans. Small survivors become larger mammals, mammals become primates, primates become humans, and the story ends with us looking back. But that is not how evolution works. Humans are not the destination of the asteroid. We are one twig on a vast branching tree. If the impact had not happened, life would have taken another path. If different mammals had survived, if climates shifted differently, if forests expanded or contracted differently, the future would have been different too. That contingency is humbling. The rise of mammals did eventually make humans possible, but it did not make humans inevitable. The asteroid did not clear the world for us. It killed countless species, spared some lineages, and changed the ecological landscape. Our ancestors were among the beneficiaries of a disaster they did not cause and could not understand. Human existence is tied to catastrophe, chance, and deep time. This gives the story a strange emotional shape. It begins with destruction, but it does not end in despair. It is a story about life's ability to rebuild, not because life is guaranteed to recover, but because variation gives it options. After the impact, most options were gone. Some remained. Those remaining options multiplied. Mammals are the descendants of survivors that found ways to live in the cracks of a broken world. That does not mean extinction is creative in a comforting way. Mass extinctions are not good. They erase evolutionary history that can never be recovered. The dinosaurs, marine reptiles, pterosaurs, ammonites, and countless other organisms were not sacrifices for mammals. They were living lineages destroyed by catastrophe. The rise of mammals came after loss, not instead of loss. We should never romanticize the asteroid, but we can recognize that ecological opportunity often follows disruption. When dominant groups disappear, survivors may expand. Empty niches are not magic boxes, but they reduce competition and create room for new experiments. Mammals had been constrained in many large-bodied roles during the dinosaur age. After the extinction, those constraints changed. Over time, mammal lineages explored the space. The phrase ecological niche is useful here. A niche is not just a place, it is a way of life. What an organism eats, where it lives, when it is active, what eats it, how it reproduces, and how it interacts with its environment. When dinosaurs vanished, many niches were disrupted or emptied. Mammals did not walk into them like job applicants. Rather, populations varied. Some individuals did better in certain conditions, and over generations, lineages shifted into new ways of life. An ecological vacancy does not automatically produce a new animal. It creates possibility. For a lineage to take advantage, it must have variation that natural selection can work on. It must survive long enough. It must reproduce. It must interact with changing environments. Mammals had enough diversity before the extinction that some lineages could respond afterward. That pre-existing diversity may be one reason their recovery was so powerful. This point is important because it overturns the old image of mammals as simply waiting in the shadows. They were not waiting, they were already evolving. The extinction did not invent mammal diversity, it changed the consequences of that diversity. Traits that had supported small-bodied survival became the foundation for later expansion. Evolution often works this way. The feature that becomes important after a crisis may have evolved earlier for another reason. Burrowing is a good example. A burrow can protect an animal from predators, temperature extremes, and weather. It may also protect during fires and impact aftermath. It did not evolve because an asteroid was coming. It existed as a useful behavior in ordinary life, and then disaster made it even more valuable. The same may be true of flexible diets, nocturnal habits, and small body size. Survival traits are often ordinary traits that become extraordinary under pressure. After recovery began, mammal communities did not simply become more diverse in species number. They became more diverse in form. This is called morphological or ecomorphological diversification. Bodies spreading into new shapes associated with new lifestyles. A world of small insectivores is diverse in one way. A world that includes climbers, diggers, swimmers, grazers, large herbivores, carnivores and gliders is diverse in another. The rise of mammals involved both species diversity and lifestyle diversity. This expansion also changed ecosystems themselves. Large herbivores alter vegetation, burrowers change soils, predators shape prey behavior, fruit eaters disperse seeds, bats pollinate and eat insects, whales move nutrients through ocean. Mammals did not merely fill the world, they began modifying it. Once a group becomes ecologically important at many sizes and in many habitats, it becomes part of the planet's operating system. Still, this was not a straight path upward. Mammal history includes extinctions, collapses, replacements, and dead ends. Some early dominant groups faded when climates changed or competitors emerged. Some continents developed unique mammal faunas because of isolation, like South America and Australia. Marsupials flourished in Australia. Placental mammals diversified widely elsewhere. Geography shaped opportunity just as much as anatomy did. Australia shows that mammal success is not one story. There, marsupials filled many roles occupied by placentals on other continents: grazers, browsers, climbers, carnivores, burrowers. This is not because marsupials were inferior or superior. It is because isolation and contingency shaped which lineages were present to diversify. Mammal evolution is a set of regional histories braided into a global pattern. South America before the Great American Biotic Interchange tells another version. Its mammals evolved in isolation with native ungulates, giant sloths, armadillo relatives, marsupial predators, and other unusual forms. When North and South America connected, faunas mixed. Some lineages spread, others declined. The world of mammals was repeatedly reshaped by continents moving and climates shifting. The asteroid opened the first great door, but plate tectonics and climate kept rearranging the rooms. Africa later became a major stage for primate and eventually human evolution, but that story depended on earlier mammal success. Forests, then changing habitats, produced conditions in which primates diversified, apes evolved, and hominins eventually emerged. Again, there was no plan. Each stage depended on local environments and prior adaptations. Our hands, eyes, brains, and social lives are part of a deep mammalian inheritance, but they are not the inevitable conclusion of that inheritance. What did mammals have that allowed such range? The answer is not one trait, it is a package. Hair for insulation, milk for nourishing young, differentiated teeth for specialized feeding, endothermy for activity across temperatures, parental care, flexible behavior, acute senses, limb structures adaptable to running, climbing, digging, swimming, and flying. None of these alone explains everything. Together, they gave mammals evolutionary flexibility. Differentiated teeth deserve special attention because they are one of the great mammalian tools. Incisors, canines, premolars, and molars can evolve separately. A mammal can become a grazer, predator, gnawer, fruit eater, insectivore, or omnivore partly by reshaping its teeth. Teeth fossilize well, so they also give paleontologists a rich record. Much of mammal evolutionary history is read through jaws and teeth, tiny fossils that speak loudly. The jaw and ear also tell a deeper story. Mammal ancestors evolved a unique jaw joint, while bones once involved in the jaw became part of the middle ear. This transformation improved hearing and helped define the mammalian lineage long before the asteroid. So when mammals survived the KPG event, they carried with them a long evolutionary history of sensory and feeding adaptations. The asteroid did not create mammals, it changed the world around an already remarkable group. This long prehistory matters because it gives the rise of mammals depth. Mammals were not invented by disaster. They were shaped by earlier eras, by competition with dinosaurs, by nocturnal life, by small body constraints, by ecological experimentation. The post-asteroid radiation was the result of old capacities meeting new opportunities. That is often how evolution works. The future is built from features that evolved in the past for different reasons. The early Paleogene was therefore not merely a recovery period but a release. Constraints weakened, some old competitors were gone, habitats changed, food webs reorganized. Mammal lineages that had once occupied smaller roles could now test larger ones. Not every test succeeded, but enough did. Over millions of years, mammals became some of the dominant vertebrates on land, and eventually in sea and sky. The rise of mammals also changed predator-prey relationships. Large herbivorous mammals created new food sources for large carnivores. Predatory mammals evolved to hunt them. Speed, horns, armor, size, herd behavior, claws, teeth, and senses entered new arms races. This did not happen immediately after the asteroid, but it grew from the ecological opportunities that followed. The post-dinosaur world became a mammal-shaped theater of pursuit and defense. Some mammals became giants, others stayed small. This is important because small mammals never stopped being successful. Rodents, bats, shrews, and small marsupials remained incredibly diverse. The story of mammal success is not only the story of becoming large. Smallness remained powerful. A mouse-like mammal and an elephant are both successful in different ways. Evolution does not rank them by impressiveness. It asks only whether lineages persist and reproduce. Rodents became one of the most successful mammal groups because small bodies, gnawing teeth, fast reproduction, and ecological flexibility work extremely well. Bats became hugely diverse because flight opened new feeding and habitat opportunities. Whales became enormous because oceans allowed body sizes impossible for land mammals. Primates became behaviorally flexible climbers and eventually tool users. Each group tells a different story of opportunity. This diversity makes mammals hard to summarize. They took over the world not by becoming one perfect form, but by becoming many forms. The mammalian body plan was flexible enough to be rewritten repeatedly. Hooves, flippers, wings, trunks, claws, gliding membranes, digging limbs, grasping hands, echolocation, tusks, baleen, antlers, and complex brains all emerged in different lineages. The post-asteroid world did not produce one mammal empire. It produced a mammal explosion, Yet the word explosion must also be handled carefully. Evolutionary radiations can be fast in geological terms, but still slow compared with human imagination. Thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of years are involved. A fossil bed may show change over 1 million years, which is quick for deep time, but unimaginably long for us. When we say mammals rapidly diversified, we are speaking in the language of rocks, not human lifetimes. That timescale is essential to the emotional power of the story. The asteroid impact was sudden. Recovery was slow. The end of the dinosaurs was a day, a season, a short catastrophe followed by years of darkness and disruption. The rise of mammals was a long dawn. It unfolded across generations beyond counting. A small mammal survives, its descendants spread, teeth change, limbs change, forests return, bodies grow, new lineages appear. The world is rebuilt one birth at a time. That image is more powerful than the idea of mammals winning. They did not win a battle. They endured a night, and then kept evolving through the morning. If this story eventually leads to humans, it does so through countless contingencies. Primates evolved in trees, some became larger, some moved into different habitats, apes diversified, African environments changed, hominins evolved bipedal walking, tool use, social complexity, and eventually language and culture. But each step depended on prior conditions. Remove the asteroid, and maybe non-avian dinosaurs continue shaping terrestrial ecosystems. Remove early primate forests, and our lineage changes, change climate patterns, and the path shifts again. Humans are therefore not the climax of mammal evolution. We are one recent, unusual branch. Our intelligence has made us planetary forces, but our origin is still tied to the same deep processes: survival, variation, opportunity, and contingency. The mammals that survived the asteroid did not do so for us. They simply lived. We are here because they lived. That should change how we see our own place in the story. We are not separate from the aftermath. We are made of aftermath. Our lineage exists because tiny animals survived in a ruined world, because forests returned, because mammals diversified, because primates evolved, because environments kept shifting. Human history is a thin layer on top of mammal history, and mammal history is built on survival after catastrophe. The asteroid did not create a better world. It created a different world. For non-avian dinosaurs, it was the end. For surviving mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, fish, insects, plants, and countless other organisms, it became the beginning of a changed planet. The moral is not that destruction is good. The moral is that life is opportunistic, fragile, and astonishingly creative when some fragments survive. In the darkness after impact, no one could have predicted whales singing in oceans, bats hunting in night skies, elephants shaping savannas, horses running across grasslands, monkeys moving through forests, or humans asking how it all happened. The future was hidden inside small bodies under ash, inside teeth, burrows, milk, fur, and hunger. That is the grandeur of this story. The rulers of the later world began as survivors. So when we say mammals took over the world, we should hear the phrase carefully. They did not conquer it by intention. They did not overthrow dinosaurs. They did not climb a ladder of progress. They survived a mass extinction, diversified into ecological openings, evolved across immense time, and became one of the most flexible and dominant groups of animals on Earth. Their rise was not destiny. It was chance meeting capability. That makes the story more dramatic, not less. A destiny story is simple. A contingency story is fragile. If things had gone slightly differently, the world might not have belonged to mammals in the same way. Different survivors, different climates, different continents, different extinctions, and the modern planet would look unlike anything we know. The familiar world is only one version of what could have happened. The rise of mammals is therefore not a victory parade. It is a recovery story. It begins in ash and scarcity. It moves through small survivors and broken food webs. It expands into forests, rivers, plains, oceans, and skies. It produces giants and miniatures, hunters and grazers, climbers and swimmers, flyers and burrowers. Eventually, it produces us, late and improbable, and that is why the story remains so compelling. It is not about mammals being better than dinosaurs. It is about how life changes when the old giants are gone. It is about how survival traits become expansion traits. It is about how empty niches become experiments. It is about how catastrophe can reset ecosystems without guaranteeing what comes next. It is about the world after the world ended. After the asteroid, The mammals did not step into sunlight as rulers. They crawled out into a damaged world, small, hungry, and uncertain. Then, across millions of years, their descendants remade the planet. To understand the early mammal world more clearly, it helps to imagine evolution working like a landscape after a storm. The forest is damaged, but not every seed is dead. Some roots survive underground, some insects survive inside wood, some small animals remain hidden in shelters. At first the recovery is patchy and ugly. There is no balanced paradise. There are gaps, shortages, and local disasters. But the survivors do not need the whole world to recover at once. They need enough patches to reproduce, spread, and try again. Mammals were good at living in patches. A small omnivorous mammal could move between disturbed habitats. It could feed on insects in one place, seeds in another, and carrion in another. It could hide in fallen logs, burrows, roots, or dense vegetation. It could raise young quickly, compared with large animals. This does not mean every small mammal survived, but it means certain mammal lifestyles were well suited to a fragmented recovery world. Large dinosaurs had been magnificent animals, but magnificence can become dangerous under catastrophe. A large body needs food, space, and stable reproduction. If photosynthesis crashes and plant communities are devastated, a huge herbivore has nowhere to turn. If huge herbivores decline, the large predators that depend on them decline too. Food chain collapse does not respect power, it moves through dependency. The bigger and more specialized an animal is, the harder it may be to shrink its needs quickly. Small mammals had smaller needs. They could live on less, hide more easily, and use microhabitats that large animals could not. This is one reason tiny survivors can become the seed of large future radiations. Their immediate advantage is not grandeur, it is low cost. In ecology, needing less can be a superpower. There may also have been advantages in living near freshwater systems. Rivers, lakes, wetlands, and shorelines can preserve food sources when terrestrial ecosystems are disrupted. Aquatic insects, detritus, seeds, roots, mollusks, fish, and amphibians may support survivors in some regions. Some early mammals may have used these environments more than we once imagined. Again, the key is not that mammals had one magic refuge. The key is that different mammals had different ways of finding refuges. The survivors were not necessarily the most impressive mammals before the extinction. They were the ones whose habits matched the crisis. This is a hard lesson. Evolutionary success is contextual. A lineage can be perfectly adapted to one world and doomed in another. The extinction did not select for moral worth or evolutionary potential in the abstract. It selected, brutally and unevenly, for traits that happened to work under impact aftermath conditions. Once the worst passed, the rules changed again. Traits that help in survival do not automatically make a lineage dominant afterward, but they keep it in the game. Mammals were in the game. As vegetation recovered and ecosystems stabilized, their descendants could begin exploring new opportunities. The transition from survival to expansion is one of the most important parts of the story. Surviving a disaster is not the same as taking over. There has to be a second phase, when surviving lineages diversify into open roles. In this second phase, body size becomes one of the clearest signs of ecological release. When large dinosaurs were gone, mammals no longer lived under the same ceiling. Some lineages grew larger. Larger body size can provide protection from predators, access to new food sources, longer travel ranges, and different reproductive strategies. But it also increases food requirements and slows reproduction. Early large mammals were testing that trade-off in a world where the old giants no longer occupied the same space. The expansion into herbivory was especially important because plants form the energy base for many land ecosystems. A mammal that can process leaves, stems, seeds, or fruits can tap into abundant resources, but plant eating requires anatomical and physiological solutions. Teeth must resist wear. Jaws must process tough material. Guts must ferment or otherwise extract nutrients. Over time, mammals evolved many solutions, from the complex stomachs of ruminants to the hindgut fermentation of horses and elephants. These later systems had deep roots in early experiments with plant-based diets. Predatory mammals evolved in response to these expanding herbivore communities. As prey grew larger and more diverse, meat-eaters followed. But predator evolution was not just a response to prey size. It involved senses, speed, bite force, social behavior in some lineages, stealth, and limb mechanics. Some predators became pursuit hunters, others became ambush specialists, others scavenged heavily or ate mixed diets. The post-dinosaur world created space not only for mammals to be prey, but for mammals to become the animals others feared. This transformation took time because ecosystems need structure. A large predator cannot evolve in isolation. It needs enough prey. The prey need enough plants. The plants need soils, climates, pollinators, and dispersers. Food webs are built layer by layer. When people imagine mammals taking over, they often picture a single rising wave. It may be better to imagine scaffolding. First the base returns, then more weight can be carried, then new levels are added. Fossil teeth and bones preserve pieces of this scaffolding. Paleontologists can track changes in mammal size, diet, and diversity through time. A jaw fragment may reveal whether an animal ate insects or plants. A limb bone may suggest running or climbing. A skull can show sensory emphasis. A fossil site with plants and mammals together can reveal how communities recovered. The story is not guessed from one dramatic skeleton. It is assembled from countless pieces, many of them small. Small fossils are easy for the public to overlook. A dinosaur skeleton fills a museum hall. A mammal tooth may sit in a tiny tray. But that tooth may carry one of the most important stories in vertebrate history. It may show a lineage-changing diet after the extinction. It may record the beginning of a radiation. It may reveal an animal living in the first million years after catastrophe. Paleontology is often built from fragments that do not look dramatic until someone understands what they mean. The rise of mammals is therefore also a story about scientific patience. For a long time, the public imagination jumped from dinosaurs to modern mammals too quickly. New fossil discoveries have filled in the middle. They show that the first million years after the impact were not blank. Mammals were diversifying, plants were recovering, body sizes were changing, and ecosystems were becoming more complex. The more fossils we find, the less the story looks like a simple switch, and the more it looks like a recovery sequence. One of the most important ideas in that recovery sequence is that mammal diversification may have begun before the asteroid. Some groups were already experimenting with different ecological forms in the late Cretaceous. That means the KPG extinction did not start the mammal story from zero. Instead, it changed which experiments could expand. In a dinosaur-dominated world, certain mammalian possibilities remained limited. In the post-dinosaur world, some of those possibilities grew much larger. This is subtle, but it changes the emotional tone. Mammals were not passive beneficiaries of dinosaur extinction. They were active evolutionary participants before and after the event. They had their own history, their own diversity, and their own losses. The asteroid did not make them important from nothing. It rearranged the world so that some of their existing capacities could become ecologically powerful. Consider the multituberculates, a long-lived group of mammals that existed alongside dinosaurs and survived the KPG extinction. They were highly successful in their time, with specialized teeth and rodent-like ecological roles in some forms. Yet they eventually went extinct. Their story is a warning against assuming that survival at one boundary guarantees permanent success. A lineage can survive a mass extinction, flourish afterward, and still disappear later when other conditions change. That pattern repeats throughout mammal history. Success is temporary. Dominance is temporary. Every lineage is living inside a moving environment. Mammals rose after dinosaurs, but mammal groups have also vanished in enormous numbers. The living mammals we see today are the survivors of many later filters, not simply the direct winners of the asteroid aftermath. The Paleocene and Eocene worlds were warmer than today in many intervals, with forests extending into regions that later became cooler or drier. Mammal evolution during these times was shaped by greenhouse climates, changing seas, and shifting vegetation. Early primates and primate-like mammals benefited from forested environments. Early hoofed mammals diversified. Predatory groups changed. Warm climates opened corridors and habitats, but later cooling and drying would favor other forms. Climate change repeatedly altered the mammal story. As the Eocene gave way to the Oligocene, global cooling changed forests and open habitats. Later, Miocene grassland expansion reshaped herbivores and predators. Ice Age cycles transformed ranges and survival pressures. The initial asteroid aftermath opened the door, but climate kept pushing mammals through new rooms. There was never one stable age of mammals. There were many mammal worlds, each replacing the last. This is why the documentary should not rush from impact to humans. The path is long and branching. Whales do not appear because mammals were destined to conquer the ocean. They appear because certain artiodactyl relatives moved into aquatic feeding niches, and natural selection transformed them across millions of years. Bats do not appear because mammals were destined to fly. They appear because small nocturnal mammals exploited aerial insects, and gliding or fluttering ancestors eventually crossed into powered flight. Primates do not appear because humans were destined. They appear because arboreal life rewarded grasping, vision, and flexible behavior. Each of these stories is a separate miracle of contingency, but none is supernatural. They are miracles in the scientific sense, improbable outcomes made real by natural processes. The rise of mammals is full of these improbable outcomes. A land animal becomes a whale, a hand becomes a wing. A small tree dweller becomes the ancestor of apes. A burrowing survivor becomes part of a lineage that eventually includes elephants. None of this was obvious from the ashes. Mammals also changed their social lives. Some remained solitary. Others evolved herds, packs, colonies, troops, and complex family structures. Social behavior can transform survival. Herds protect herbivores and help them find resources. Packs can help predators hunt or defend territory. Colonies can protect burrowers. Primate groups support learning and social intelligence. Mammalian parental care provided a foundation on which more complex social systems could evolve in many lineages, but sociality also has costs. It can spread disease, it creates competition, it requires communication and coordination. As with every trait, it is not simply better, it is useful under certain conditions. Mammals explored the entire range from solitary hunters to massive herds, from bat colonies to whale pods, from naked mole rat societies to primate troops. This behavioral diversity became another layer of their ecological success. The sensory world of mammals diversified too. Some became smell-driven nocturnal animals, some developed acute hearing, bats evolved echolocation, primates increasingly relied on vision. Whales and dolphins developed underwater acoustic worlds. Moles reduced vision and specialized for touch and smell underground. Mammals did not just move into new environments physically, they learned to perceive those environments differently. Every niche is also a sensory universe. This is an underappreciated part of taking over the world. To live in the ocean, a mammal must sense underwater. To fly at night, a bat must map darkness. To graze open plains, a herbivore must detect predators at distance. To live underground, a mole must navigate soil. Mammal evolution rewrote not only bodies, but ways of experiencing reality. The story also has a deep connection to metabolism. Endothermy allowed mammals to remain active in cooler conditions and at night, but it required constant fuel. This pushed mammals into feeding strategies that could sustain high energy demands. Some ate frequently. Some evolved torpor or hibernation to reduce energy use. Some became large enough to retain heat efficiently. Some migrated. The rise of mammals was partly an energetic story, how to pay the cost of being warm, active, and behaviorally flexible. Reproduction carried similar trade-offs. Mammalian young often require significant parental investment. Milk is powerful, but producing milk costs energy. Protecting young costs time and risk. Longer development can produce capable offspring but slows reproduction. Different mammal lineages solved these trade-offs differently. Small rodents may produce many young quickly. Elephants produce few young slowly and invest heavily. Marsupials externalize much development after birth. Monotremes retain egg-laying. Mammalian success includes all these strategies, not one universal formula. This diversity of reproductive strategy helps explain resilience across environments. A lineage with many offspring can rebound quickly but may suffer high mortality. A lineage with few, well-cared-for offspring may succeed where learning, protection, and long life matter. Some strategies work in disturbed habitats, others work in stable ones. After the asteroid, and throughout later Cenozoic change, mammal lineages repeatedly shifted along these trade-offs. Another important force was competition among mammals themselves. Once mammals diversified, they became each other's rivals. Early herbivores competed for plants. Predators competed for prey. Small mammals competed for seeds and insects. New groups replaced older ones in some roles. The age of mammals was not a unified mammalian family success story. It was also a battlefield of mammal lineages against other mammal lineages. This matters because people sometimes imagine mammals as one team. They were not. A saber-toothed cat and a horse were both mammals, but one hunted and one fled. A whale and a seal might compete for fish. Rodents and primates might compete for fruit. Mammals took over the world by diversifying into conflicting roles. Their success as a group included endless conflict within the group. At the same time, mammals built relationships with other organisms that were not purely competitive. Flowering plants and fruit-eating mammals influenced each other. Insects and bats formed predator-prey systems. Large herbivores shaped grassland. Mammals carried seeds, disturbed soils, created trails, and recycled nutrients. Ecosystems are made of interactions, not isolated winners. The rise of mammals changed the behavior and evolution of many other organisms. This web of interaction gives the story a larger meaning. After mass extinction, recovery is not just the return of species numbers. It is the return of relationships. Pollination, seed dispersal, predation, grazing, scavenging, decomposition, migration, and soil disturbance all rebuild ecological complexity. Mammals became important because they entered many of those relationships. They became threads in the recovering fabric. The asteroid's aftermath also reminds us that survival can depend on being overlooked. During the dinosaur age, small mammals were not the most spectacular animals. They lived in ecological shadows, but shadows can be shelters. The same world that limited their large-bodied expansion also allowed them to persist in small roles. When disaster came, the spectacular giants were exposed in ways many small animals were not. Sometimes marginal life becomes future life. That idea has narrative power. The rulers of tomorrow may be the animals no one notices today, not because evolution is fair, but because changing conditions can reverse advantage. A lineage that seems minor in one world can become central in another. Mammals are the classic example. They were long overshadowed, then became dominant after the world changed. The lesson is not revenge, it is contingency. We should also be careful with the word ruler. Mammals rule the modern world only in certain senses. Insects are vastly more numerous in species and individuals. Microbes dominate biochemical processes. Plants produce the energy base of terrestrial ecosystems. Humans, one mammal species, now have planetary influence, but that is extremely recent. Mammals are ecologically prominent, large, visible, and diverse, but they are not the only successful life forms. Taking over is a human phrase, not a biological title. Still, mammals did become central in ways that would have been hard to imagine before the impact. The largest land animals today are mammals. The largest ocean animals are mammals. Many top predators are mammals. Some of the most behaviorally complex animals are mammals. Humans with culture and technology have changed the planet. This prominence traces back through the post-extinction radiation, even if the path was not planned. The story therefore sits between humility and awe. Humility, because mammals did not earn the earth through superiority, and humans were not inevitable. Awe, because from small survivors came whales, elephants, bats, wolves, horses, apes and us. The same catastrophe that erased so much also revealed the latent flexibility of a group that had spent millions of years living in smaller roles. If this were a visual documentary, the opening would not show mammals standing triumphant over dinosaur bones. It would show silence, ash, ferns, small movement in the debris, a nose emerging from a burrow, a tiny body searching for food. Then time would accelerate. Plants return, insects swarm, mammals spread, a jaw changes, a limb lengthens, a body grows, forests fill with climbing forms, rivers attract swimmers, open plains produce runners, oceans receive returning mammals, night skies fill with bats. The camera would keep pulling back until the world is alive with mammal shapes. That is the right emotional arc. From survival to opportunity, from opportunity to diversity, from diversity to planetary presence. Not conquest, not destiny. Emergence, the word emergence captures it better than takeover. Mammals emerged from a changed world because they had survived the old one. Their rise was not sudden heroism, but accumulated adaptation. Every generation lived only its own life. No animal knew it was part of a grand radiation. A Paleocene mammal did not know it was helping build the future age of mammals. It was looking for food, avoiding predators, finding mates, and raising young. Evolutionary history is built from ordinary lives with extraordinary consequences. That is why this story feels so powerful. It takes the smallest scale, a single animal surviving another day, and connects it to the largest scale, the reshaping of life on Earth. The bridge between those scales is time. Time turns survival into diversification. Time turns variation into new body plans. Time turns ecological openings into entire radiations. Time turns a frightened survivor into an ancestor of giants. When we look at modern mammals, we are seeing the results of countless such bridges. A whale's flipper remembers a limb, a bat's wing remembers a hand, a horse's hoof remembers toes. A human hand remembers grasping ancestors in trees. Mammal bodies are archives of transformations. The asteroid did not write those transformations alone, but it helped create the world in which many of them became possible. This is why the post-extinction world deserves as much attention as the impact itself. The impact is spectacular: fireball, shockwaves, tsunamis, darkness, extinction. But the recovery is where the future is made. Destruction can happen quickly. Rebuilding is the deeper story. Mammals are the protagonists of that rebuilding, not because they were the only survivors, but because their later radiation changed so much of terrestrial and marine life. The final image should not be a crown placed on a mammal's head. It should be a branching tree growing from ash. Some branches are cut off, some grow huge, some twist into the sea, some reach into the air, some remain small near the ground. One tiny branch eventually produces primates, apes, and humans. The tree has no central plan, yet it becomes vast. That is the rise of mammals, not a victory over dinosaurs, not a march toward humans, a branching recovery after catastrophe, powered by survival, opportunity, anatomy, behavior, and time. And if there is a lesson in that recovery, it is that survival is never small while it is happening. A creature hiding in a burrow does not look like the beginning of an age. A jaw with new teeth does not look like a revolution. A body growing slightly larger than its ancestors does not look like a planetary shift. But deep time is built from these small changes. The age of mammals was not born in one dramatic moment. It accumulated. The first survivors did not know they were survivors of a boundary that future scientists would name. They knew hunger, shelter, danger, and reproduction. Their descendants did not know they were filling ecological niches. They lived in forests, along rivers, under roots, on branches, and in the dark. Later descendants ran across open ground, dug into soil, hunted in packs, browsed leaves, grazed grass, swam through seas, and flew through night. Every step was local. Every consequence became global, only when viewed from millions of years away. That is what makes the mammal story so different from a simple disaster ending. The asteroid ended one world, but it did not write the next world in advance. Next world had to be assembled by survivors, by plants growing back, by insects returning, by predators finding prey, by prey finding defenses, by climate opening and closing routes, by continents carrying animals into contact, by extinction removing some branches and opportunity feeding others. Mammals became important because they were adaptable. But adaptability is not magic. It is made of bodies that can vary, diets that can shift, behaviors that can change, and lineages that survive long enough for selection to work. That is the real miracle. Not that mammals were chosen, but that enough of them remained possible. So after the asteroid, life did not simply recover. It reinvented the shape of dominance. The animals that had once lived beneath dinosaur shadows became diggers, climbers, grazers, hunters, swimmers, flyers, thinkers, singers, and builders. Some became giants, some stayed tiny, some vanished, some are still with us, and one of them is telling the story. That is why the rise of mammals is not just a prehistoric episode. It is a reminder that the future often begins quietly, in shelters, in fragments, in survivors too small to notice. The giants disappear, the sky darkens, the old order breaks, and still something breathes. From that breath given time, an entirely different world can grow, not because it was promised, but because life kept finding ways to continue. That quiet beginning is the real drama behind every mammal alive on Earth today, still unfolding.